Hey Bushnell students, welcome to week 8. It's our last week here. You're almost done. So this week we have a number of learning objectives from chapters 13 and 14. And this week our objectives that we're going to be studying, the topics we're going to be looking at is understanding the factors to consider when you're sourcing services or products to a third-party company. Like what are their ethics, what is their ability to produce the parts or services that you want? How are you going to assess that? We're also going to be looking at the impact of what we call the bullwhip effect on the flow of material through any supply chain. We're going to be looking at realizing the relationship, that there is a relationship really between supplier and customer, and we're going to look at that like supply, demand, and the whole supply chain structure. We're also going to be looking at touching on third-party logistics, and then assessing, how do you assess the issues related to plant location and that sort of thing, either your plant location or your supplier's plant location. So I want to talk for just a minute about Chapter 13's topic of sourcing decisions. I used to be manager at a stamping plant for a Tier 1 automotive company. So we supplied parts directly to Ford, GM, Chrysler, or Fiat Chrysler rather, Toyota, Honda, etc. And I would often visit our suppliers, called Tier 2 suppliers in the supply chain, who were not delivering quality parts to our plant. And oftentimes, those supplier plants were well run, but they struggled somewhere in their process, and bad parts got out of their system and into ours. So every once in a while, though, I would visit one of our supplier plants, and they'd be a complete train wreck from beginning to end as I walked in. Without using company names, of course, I've visited one of those Tier 2 companies. This was a number of years ago, but I haven't forgot it. And it's right here in our own community. This was a supplier just a few miles away from me. Their cost was great, but their quality was really questionable at times. And the working conditions were almost unspeakable. So when I walked into their plant, the first thing I noticed was that the air quality was really poor. There was this low-hanging, like gray haze all throughout the plant created by their process. Their ventilation system was not working. It wasn't working very well, if it was working at all. The next thing I did was open the door to the men's bathroom and looked inside. Indescribable is the only thing I can say. By the time I got to the shipping deck, I wasn't surprised to see chaos and large piles of non-conforming material everywhere. And by the way, if you want to know if an operation treats their people well, this is a serious thing. I'll go look in their bathrooms, and you'll find out pretty quick if they take treatment of their employees well. You see, if you have suppliers that are not treating their workers well, the cost of the product or the service doesn't even matter. While I wasn't satisfied that we should keep them as a supplier, the sourcing manager, the purchasing manager for the company that I worked for, did maintain that relationship with them, and he kept buying from them. It was a sad day because I felt like my hands were tied and the decision was forced on me. So if you're sourcing business to other people, conduct a walkthrough of that plant or that location. Just look at how they treat their employees, and you get a good thumbnail of their quality as well. And you can make that decision. Consider the ethics of the source of how you're being sourcing. I included a video of a stamping plant operation in the intent section that I think will help make my point that how you treat people usually is an indication of the quality you produce as well. Okay, so from chapter 13, we're also learning about the connection between supply, demand, and the structure of supply chains. A couple of years ago, as I was listening to like a podcast or something, for the reasons for increased gas prices at the pump. Now I thought of this course, and so I took a moment, thought about it, and considered gas as an inventory, and think about the supply chain delivering that gas to your vehicle. So the explanation for increasing gas prices at that time went something like this. The excessive domestic oil inventory reserve was starting to dwindle. So No explanation was given, but in itself, as the supply drops, the price is going to go up. And next, the report indicated that the Saudis at that time had been reducing their exports again, driving supply low and driving the cost up. And finally, it was summertime and people traveled more. So, yep, demand goes up. The cost of driving goes up. So if you put your supply chain hat on for just a moment, the price fluctuation makes sense in terms of gas cost, even though we don't like the outcome. There's actually something driving a lot of that. Sometimes it's legitimate and sometimes it's just a way for people to make more money, I guess. All right, and finally, we're talking about plant location and logistics this week. A few years ago, a tier 1 supplier to the automotive manufacturers experienced a significant fire in their plant. Now, this plant's only about 15 minutes from the community where I live here in Michigan. And the parts are made from magnesium and they go to a number of different car companies around the world. The fire started in an area of the plant that eventually caught the magnesium on fire. Well, to make matters worse, the sprinkler system kicked in and watered down the flaming magnesium pellets. Now, if you remember anything from your high school chemistry classes, never try to put a magnesium fire out with water. It explodes and gets worse. It's very volatile. Well, that's what happened, unfortunately. A couple people got injured and the supply chain was in jeopardy for sure. The workers lost their jobs temporarily and the supplier had to move their production to other locations. So the consequences of that move was increased transportation costs that had to be absorbed by the supplier. The car companies, they were going to pay for that increased transportation cost. That's on the supplier to take care of. And speaking of those car companies, I've included a short list of automotive manufacturers that counted on this plant's supply of magnesium parts, again, that went around the world. Also, I guess all said, be aware of your supplier's capabilities and their contingency plans and the risk that that exposes to you and your company. Okay, our last week is not so bad in terms of it's not very heavy lift, not like week 7. So we're doing a quiz on chapters 10, 11, 13, and 14, and your presentation. Keep in mind, your presentation is built directly from your paper. So the better job you did on the paper, the better prepared you'll be for this presentation. Please be sure to read the presentation assignment details in the complete section in Beacon Learning there for this week, along with information in the syllabus. Those two sources gives you a number of important points and some reminders about the presentation. The details in there also include a basic agenda of how the presentation is going to go. Now listen, you're going to be fine doing this. As I've been saying, have some fun with this presentation. Don't be nervous about it. You're the expert on your company and its challenges, not me. All right, that's it for now. Please be sure to read all of chapters 13 and 14 on global sourcing and logistics. Be sure to watch this week's devotional and all the required intent tabs as well. You're almost done on this course. Don't start coasting yet. Finish strong. Remember, God is on his throne. He's always been there and he's always going to be. Have a great week.